creators, are you ready for me to show you how to use your bag buddy? This is the latest acrylic template available on my website at sewyours.com. This is a 12-in-1 tool specifically for bag making that I think is going to make your life a lot easier. So continue watching so you can learn all about the bag buddy. Okay, the first two things that the bag buddy can do is it can create a 10 by 6 zipper pocket or slip pocket on the fold. So what I've done is I'm using some muslin fabric today for the demonstration. I have just taken a section right here real quick and I folded it over. I'm going to place one of the long raw edges of the bag buddy against the fold right here. And I'm going to carefully go ahead and cut around it with my rotary cutter. Make sure that you keep your hands out of the way and you got firm pressure on your bag buddy. Okay, so there we have it. We have a 10 by 6 slip pocket or zipper pocket on the fold, which ends up being 10 by 12. Now, say you want to go ahead and have your pocket, say 10 by 5 inches. You could easily go ahead and do that by just placing the folded edge along the inner portion here of the zipper pocket facing, just like I'm doing right here, and then you can just cut it so that it's 10 by 5. So that's a little alternative you can do right there. And now we have a 10 by 10. So just a little bit of a narrower pocket. So this would be your slip pocket right here, or your zipper pocket. So that's the first two things. The next thing is going to be an 8-inch zipper pocket facing. I've already cut one out right here. So you can see this is a zipper pocket facing. I have gone ahead and drawn the inner lines. So let me show you right here. Here's the zipper pocket facing. Okay, so I've got my fabric laid out and I'm just going to use this cut edge that I already have. And there is a line running down the side right here, which is going to tell me where I need to go ahead and lay it on the cut portion of the fabric right here. So I'm just going to lay this down, making sure it's nice and straight. Put some firm pressure on your bag buddy and go ahead and cut around the 3 sides. There we have it. So I've got that cut out. So then all you have to do is go ahead and get this nice and centered. And now we're going to go ahead with our pen and trace along the inside portion right here. So there we have our zipper pocket facing. That's going to accommodate an 8-inch wide or 8-inch long zipper. I'm not going to go into detail on how to do zipper pocket facings in bags, as I've done that multiple times in my sewing videos, so you guys can check that out. A lot of my patterns have the zipper pocket facing method, so you can check that out. All right, so let's move on to the next thing. Now I'm going to show you how to go ahead and do the 1-inch or 3/4 inch rivet spacing guides that are on the bag buddy. So for an example right here, this is the previously made Duplicity handbag that does call for some evenly spaced decorative rivets along the front of the bag that I've done right here. So basically the way that we're going to do that with our bag buddy is, first off, we're going to work with the 1-inch spacing. So say I want my rivets spaced evenly at 1 inch apart. Go ahead and grab a strap connector, or in this particular example, I've got a previously prepared bag strap that I used in another demonstration. I'm going to go ahead and want to put rivets every 1 inch apart. So what you want to do is you're going to lay this on the bottom edge of your strap connector or your strap. And then you're simply going to go ahead and use your pen to mark out however many rivets you want to place. So you don't have to use them all, you might only want a couple of them, depends on what you're working on. So now, as you can see right here, I have my rivets nice and centered and 1 inch apart. One thing to take into consideration though, is if you're working on a specific bag pattern and it calls for, like the Duplicity, a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance along the bottom right here, I would personally go ahead and just measure out 3/8 of an inch from the bottom edge. So I'm going to take my ruler right here. And I'm going to draw a line at 3/8 of an inch. So that's going to let me know that this is actually where I want to go ahead and start my rivets. So I would place the bottom edge of the bag buddy right there, and then I would proceed to make my markings instead. So that's something to think about when you're working with your rivet spacing. All right, so the same thing goes for the 3/4 of an inch spacing. That's just gonna provide you with rivets spaced closer together. So the same thing, you're just gonna go ahead and line it up however you need it to be at the bottom edge. And you can kind of use your hand to push this into place. And you want this to be nice and flat along this edge right here. And then we also have a line right here to help you guide you, so that way it's nice and centered. And then you're just going to come in again and make your markings. So that's the 3/4 of an inch. All right, so the next thing is purse feet placement. So we're going to use the purse feet placement both on the bottom corners right here. So this is my pretend bottom of my bag that I'm working on, and I want to put purse feet in. Say the pattern that I'm working on calls for the purse feet to be in 1 3/4 of an inch this direction and 1 3/4 of an inch from this direction. I'm just going to go ahead and find that particular hole that matches up. So right here is the hole for the 1 3/4, and all I got to do is place this template, the Bag Buddy, on the corner of my fabric. And then I'm just going to go ahead and find that 1 3/4 of an inch hole and make my mark. And then I'll do the same thing for this side. And then you're going to repeat for the opposite sides. I can't exactly see this edge so well because I'm leaning over. Hopefully I've got that good. And then we got this one. Same's going to go for the 1 1/2 inch wide or the 2 inch wide. Depends on where you want your purse feet placement. I went with these 3 measurements because it seemed to be the most common in most patterns. And then you would take your hole punch and you're going to go ahead and punch a hole in each of these locations. All right, now you just go ahead and install your purse feet. These are the prong ones available on my website. And then I have the screw-in ones as well. So whatever one that you are working with, you'll install those into the holes per the manufacturer's instructions. And there you have your purse feet placement. Okay, let's go ahead now and do the 1 1/2 inch strap rivet spacing, which is the 2 vertical holes right here. So when we're making a 1 1/2 inch wide strap, we want to start with a 6 inch wide piece of fabric. This is just a simulated bag strap. Obviously yours is going to be 20 inches long all the way up to perhaps 55 inches long, depending on what you're making. So I'm just using a little piece right here for the demonstration. So what I've done is I've cut this 6 inches wide, which is the perfect size for a quilting roller, just like this. As you can see here, I have my acrylic ruler handle on my quilting roller right here. This is one of the new products I have on my website at sewyours.com. These are great because you can quickly and easily pick up your quilting ruler and move it around on your fabric and get it adjusted just so, versus if you are just using your hands and trying to use your fingernails to kind of get it picked up and move it around like that. Like this much better. And so I do the 2 fingers method, but you can hold it just like this too. So you can go ahead and get yourself one of those if you think it would be handy for you. So 6 inch wide by however long of your bag strap. Down the center, you're going to mark a line dividing those two, so 3 inches in from the side. Put your double-sided tape, which I've already done. Fold this in to meet the center line. So this is just like any other bag strap. Then you're going to go ahead, fold it in half again, and clip it into place. These vinyl clips are also on my website. Take this over to your sewing machine, sew down the left and the right side at 1/8 of an inch. All right, here is my bag strap, and we're going to go ahead and use the single rivets, so the 2, and you're just going to go ahead and place it along the bottom edge if you're using a strap end. So you might be able to see here, it says raw end, then there's a dashed line, and then there's a strap end. So if I wanted to put a strap end on this strap, which I don't have any strap ends that are 1.5 inch wide. But if you had one of those and you were going to use that, go ahead and line this up right along the bottom edge here of the bag buddy. However, if you are working with a raw end like this one right here, you're going to match up the edge of your strap with the dotted line here that's just underneath the word raw end, which I am going to do here since I'm working with a raw end. And there is a line right here on the one side, and there's also another line on this side. I'm just making sure that the left and the right side of my strap is matching up with that, so everything is nicely centered. And that looks good. Now, all you gotta do is take your pen and mark out where those 2 rivets are supposed to be. Just like that. And then I would proceed to go ahead and punch my holes. Then we'll add an additional 2 holes, but I want to actually visually show you the double rivet spacing, which is the same exact process. So let's just go ahead and flip this around. We're going to flip around our bag buddy. And so say I want to do 4 rivets on my bag straps. I am going to go ahead again, I'm going to select the raw end, so match up that on the dotted line. Place that down, make sure the left and the right sides are nicely matching up here. Make my markings. Okay, I'm going to punch my holes with my leather hole punch. I got this one on Amazon. I'll leave a link in the description box below. And I'm just going to move this in front of me so I can see what I'm doing. Okay, so my holes are now punched right here. Now, if I had 1.5 inch hardware, I would basically it would be placed right here. And to make your life a little bit easier, instead of trying to figure out where exactly you want your additional 4 sets of holes to be, all I do is I go ahead and I lay this down so that the edge of the bag buddy is right here on kind of like the middle of the holes. And then I'm just going to go ahead and use the inner part of the pocket facing to just draw a line with my removable marking pen right there. So now I know that I need to get that second set placed on that line. So you have the 4 holes right here, the bottom 2 holes that are closest to this edge, I'm going to place on that line. And I'm going to move it in front of me just so I can see it better. It's hard to see with that dark print. Okay, so my line that I drew is right here. So I've got it basically lined up just like this. My left and my right sides are also matching up. Now I'm just going to go ahead and mark out my holes right there. So that's the next set. And let's go ahead and punch those. Okay, so now at this point, add your hardware. So it's going to sit between the set of 4 holes here and the 4 holes here. And then once that hardware is on, you're going to fold that around the hardware. And I'm working with a marine vinyl here, so it's a pretty thick vinyl. And then you're going to get your rivets. And I'm just going to, I like to do it like this. I like to pop them in this side first. And then my hardware is already on, like I said. Then I'll fold it around the hardware, and then I'll work on getting them pushed through this side. Okay, so there we have our 4 rivets, and these are 9mm rivets, so they're on the larger side. You'll have more space, obviously, if you went with a 6 or a 7 or even an 8mm rivet. And then I would put the other rivet side of the rivets on, which I'm not doing. I don't want to set these rivets and waste them since this is just a quick instructional video. But you would have your swivel snap hook right here, and then that would be how your end of your bag strap would be. So that's how you do the double. And so the single one that I showed you earlier, it's the same exact process. It's just, it's going to be the 2 holes, a 1 inch space between it, and then you're going to do your other 2 holes right there in the center. Okay, that is how you do the rivet spacing for the 1.5 inch wide strap for single and double. Okay, let's move on to the magnetic snap placement, which is right here across the top. So let me explain what that is. I wanted to make it a little bit easier for you guys to be able to just quickly figure out where do you need to put your magnetic snaps on, say, like pocket flaps or flap closures, I should say. So on a flap closures. So if you're working with a pattern or you're working on a bag where you're using a 1/2 inch seam allowance, you're going to go ahead and use this set right here. 3/8 of an inch is here and 1/4 of an inch is here. A lot of my patterns for flap closures is 1/4 of an inch, whereas some other people might do 1/2 of an inch or 3/8 of an inch. It just depends on what you're using. So let's just say, let's go with the 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. So I just quickly, roughly hand cut this fabric right here. It's going to emulate a flap closure on a bag. So got that right there. And what we want to do is, this is where our magnetic snap is going to be placed, on the bottom edge of the flap. What I want to do is I want to find the center of my flap. So we can do that by folding this in half and just cutting a little notch down the center. You could also press it with an iron if you're working with cotton fabric. It's just a little notch right there. So now I know where my center is. Okay, once you have your center, you're going to go ahead and, let me turn this around so it's the right way. You're going to go ahead and, I think I said I was going to do the 1/4 inch. Okay, so we're doing the 1/4 inch. We want to place the line right here on the center mark right here. And the way I designed these two holes is it's exactly the same as your washer. So if I lay this on top, it matches up to the T. So what you want to do is you're just going to make your marks just like you would if you were using your washer. The only benefit of using this is you know exactly where your placement's going to be every single time you put a magnetic snap on a flap closure, or even the inside of a tote bag that's a magnetic closure. You can do that too. Now I just need to cut these two. So I'm just using a X-Acto knife from my Cricut machine. And at this point, you could go ahead and install your magnetic snap and do that. I prefer to always do it at the end, and I kind of work with that. So that's just what I'm going to do right now. But you could go ahead and install it like you normally would. Obviously, your fabric's going to have some woven interfacing on it, and likely some Decavo light or foam stabilizer, something like that. I'm not doing all of that today with this demonstration. So what we're going to do, since I'm leaving that like this, we're going to go ahead and put right sides together. So let's just pretend this is right sides together. I'm going to take this over to my sewing machine. I'm going to sew around this bottom edge right here, leaving the top open. All right, I got that sewn, and just to point out, because I used the 1/4 of an inch one right here, I sewed this with a 1/4 of an inch. If your pattern said 3/8 of an inch, you would sew this with a 3/8 of an inch, and so on. So that's now sewn. Now you would trim down your seam allowance. And if you hear noise in the background, that's actually my daughter filling your orders. So she works for me in the evenings to fill orders. So that's what she's doing right now. So that's what all that background noise is. Okay. Now you're going to turn it right side out. And this is where I like to go ahead, and I either decide to install it now or I install it at the end. I usually like to do it at the very end. So I'll press this with an iron. Then I'll come in, and this is designed to always do an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance for top stitching. So that's what you're going to want to do. So I'm going to press this with an iron, top stitch it at an 1/8 of an inch, and I'll be back. All right, now that's top stitched. I know this looks a little messy. I'm not really trying to go for perfection here, just giving you guys the general overview of what how to use this tool. So we got it top stitched, and this is the time that I always like to go ahead and place my magnetic snap in. So you're just going to go ahead and put it through the holes. I like to add an additional layer of Decavo light on the back, put my washer on, fold my prongs open, and then I add some duct tape usually as well. I'm not doing it because I don't want to use this magnetic snap, but this is the result you're going to get whenever you're using this tool. So it's just a little bit up from the bottom raw edge, which is perfect for all of your bags. So you just select the seam allowance that you're using and then pick one of these so that you get this end result every time. All right, so that is that one. Let's see what we have left. Let's do the strap connector right here, the stencil. So I have one already cut. to show you. So this creates a strap connector. So here is the strap connector. You would cut generally 4 of these, because this is generally for tote bag style, when you have the over the shoulder straps, but sometimes you might also do it for a crossbody strap too. So 2 to 4 of these you're going to cut, and then you add in a D-ring or a rectangle ring like this, or even an O-ring, depends on what you're working with, and you're going to go ahead and fold that over. I like to fold it over just about to here, so I don't want to go too tight like that. I like to have it just a little bit up, so fold it over like that. And I usually add a strip of double-sided tape right here, and then you're going to sew this onto your bag if you can do a 1/16 of an inch, do a 1/16 of an inch around this outer perimeter across this side. And then I like to go ahead and add 2 rivets to the front of it. So I'm not doing it, but just let me show you. So then you would just have 2 decorative rivets right here. And you would add that obviously whenever this is already attached to your bag. So I mentioned this in the introductory video. I designed this like a stencil because I wanted to maintain the integrity of the acrylic, thinking in mind when I'm shipping this to you or you guys just using it on a daily basis. I didn't want it to bend and snap, so I thought this would give it more stability, and it's really easy to use. So all you want to do is you're going to take your vinyl or cork or whatever you're using. This isn't done with cotton fabric, so you want to stick with something that's not going to fray. And I'm putting it close to the corners here. And then you're going to get your pen, and I usually go ahead and kind of have it angled towards the inside, so that way it's consistent throughout. So you're just going to go ahead and trace around. Okay, so there you have it. And now there's no reason to connect the dots with your pen. All you got to do is come in now with your scissors, and you're going to cut right down just as you were normally going to cut if the line was connected, just like this. You're just going to go ahead and cut the whole thing out. I'm not going to show you how to cut on the line. You guys know how to do that. So you're just going to cut this out, and that produces a strap connector that you guys can use. So that's a nice little touch. Let me know in the comments if you guys make your own strap connectors a lot. I'm thinking of doing maybe a collection of different templates or stencils perhaps for strap connectors in all different sizes and shapes. So if that's something you're interested in, let me know, and maybe I'll start working on that for you. All right, the last thing that we are going to go over is our seam allowance guide right here. It's probably hard to see because it's really tiny, but we can go ahead and use this to gauge where our seam allowance is on our sewing machine. So we're going to move over to the sewing machine, and I'll show you what I'm talking about. Okay, now that we're over at the sewing machine, I first wanted to point out the little ducky that I have at the top of my machine right here. If you have ordered with me in the past, you have likely gotten a ducky of some sort. I offer them in multiple different colors. In the past, I've also had different critters as well. You might have gotten a rabbit or a bear, but right now I have ducks, and I think I have a few rabbits left. So what I like to do with mine is I just put a little piece of double-sided tape on the bottom side, and I like to stick them to the top of my machine. I've done the same with all of these little ladybugs as well. So if you order with me, you'll get a ducky. If you don't get a ducky, it's probably because we're out of stock at the time, but that's something to look forward to. Okay, now back to our bag buddy. I have the seam allowance guide right here in front of us. We have little holes going along the edge right here, ranging from 1/8 of an inch all the way up to 1 inch. And those little holes are meant for your sewing machine needle to drop into. So if your sewing pattern or whatever your project you're working on, say, calls for 1/2 of an inch seam allowance, you're going to go ahead and select that little hole right next to where it says 1/2 of an inch. Make sure your presser foot is in the up position. Go ahead and bring your needle down into that hole very slowly, because you don't want to break your needle. So once your needle's dropped into that hole, bring your presser foot down easily. Then now you know you're going to have a 1/2 inch seam allowance anytime you're sewing. You can add some washi tape along the side right here, but what I love is a magnetic seam guide right here. I started using mine about 6 months ago, and I didn't think I needed it because I thought I was pretty confident with my sewing skills, but this has even made my stitching much straighter, so I use a magnetic seam guide every single time. So I do now sell these on my website at sewyours.com, so you guys can pick one up in addition to your bag buddy if you want. What you do is you just place this right down, butt up against your bag buddy, just like this, where it's next to your needle. Then you'll raise your presser foot and raise your needle. And now you can begin by placing your fabric. And now when you sew, you know that you're going to have a 1/2 inch seam allowance that's perfectly straight going right down the piece of fabric right here. So highly recommend getting yourself a magnetic seam guide. So the same is going to go for any of the other holes, depending on what project you're working on or what pattern your seam allowance calls for. So nice little handy tool to have right here. So you can always keep this right next to your sewing machine and make your adjustments as needed whenever you're working on a project. All right, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you have any questions, go ahead and leave them in the description box and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Go ahead and pick up your bag buddy in clear glitter with stars or this pink glitter on my website at sewyours.com. And until next time, have a good one.